Running cars, welcome back. I gotta turn this down. I gotta turn that down. Okay. Sensitive mode. I was just thinking about this drive to work. I when I was actually driving around during the test drive of my car, the salesperson, he fact finding, mining. What kind of music do you listen to? I showed up in a BMW and was trading it off for a new car, and he drove it the first round, of course. And I was sitting in the passenger seat. And during the little talk that we were having, chit chat thing, is that you probably like driving this around in sport mode. I said, okay. Then it came my turn to sit in the driver's seat, and I was sold on the car as soon as Alpha people get this about this car. You sit in the driver's seat, the steering wheel, everything. If you're a Euro fan, this is the car. Dodge Hornet 2023 GT Plus, blah blah blah. My point is that he made a point about saying you'd like driving this around in sport mode, and I thought, you don't know me. Who are you? Who are you to be saying that about me? I didn't say anything at the time. I was like, okay. I know I've had sport modes in different cars before. You know, the manual transmission is gone by the way of the dodo at this point. I hope they bring it back because it does make cars cheaper and more fun. But people just don't want to learn it. They don't. So we're all stuck with automatic transmissions. And when I was buying the BMW, my friend there at Behind the Wheel Experience, I'm like, oh, this is all that's on the market. And I think I'm going to have to go for a BMW 3 Series. And he's like, find one with a manual. And I was like, yeah, I agree. However, the practicality of real life driving in stop and go traffic to and from work, where I was at the time, a manual transmission meant work. I was actually driving my daughter's Golf, and it was a manual, and I loved it for that. It's a very fun car. But I did drive it to and from work in stop and go traffic, and it really sucked. It did. It really sucked driving that car to and from work. Well, mostly home from work. The drive to work was no problem, but when shift ended and everybody was on the road, the Colwood Crawl on the island, if you know about it, stop and go and clutching and the whole thing it took away from the enjoyment of the car. Just other than the fact that I got to be a standard, and I love standards. I love a manual transmission, but that kind of driving with a manual transmission, it really sucked. It really sucked. And I can see why most people, if they're working a job in the city and all of that, do. I ended up buying a BMW at the time with the automatic thing, and it had the dynamic sport, whatever. And one of the best transmissions I've ever worked in my life is that. That's not my point. My point is that S mode became a thing in the 90s, and it was usually on higher priced cars, luxury stuff, right? And it came with an automatic, and I always denounced it. But we bought a Jag, an XK8, and it had a S button. sport mode. But what it did to the car was scary. I'm a small engine fan. I like driving the most out of small engines. You get most. That's my thing. However, on those big engine cars, if you're not used to it, and you don't have the room, you run out of road quickly. Corners come fast, and when I hit S mode, I'm now going to call it sensitive mode, but it turned the car on. The engine came alive. It started to roar and pounce, and the same thing actually happened with the BMW. I could, it was very, very, very fun, capable car in regular driving automatic mode, but when I switched it over to dynamic sport, uh, it was tough to explain, but the car would gear down itself. You were, if you haven't driven one, drive one, even in on automatic, and put it in dynamic sport mode, and the car does more, and you can feel it as soon as you touch the button and the gas pedal or the brake. And I find that with this Hornet, it's not as noticeable. It's not as noticeable. However, the engine does come alive. It's very close. It's very close. It's a dumbed down version of, I think, what that dynamic sport system in the BMW was. It can't do as much. It can't gear down, things like that. The engine does do it. It runs at higher revs, things like that. The suspension does stiffen up. The steering changes. It becomes a little bit heavier. And when the salesperson said, "You probably like this in sport mode all the time," I was actually thinking fuel mileage. Because I know, like, most sport modes in most vehicles is just a gimmick. And all it means is that the engine comes alive, you burn more gas. Nothing else really changes on it. it I think the sport mode in most cars nowadays is just a selling point. And I could say this about this car. I really could. Because it isn't that. It livens the car up. It does change the steering, and I can see why the salesperson said that to me, because it does do certain things. It does do certain things, like the steering becomes better. The engine actually works a little bit better. But what I've noticed in driving this car, and I'm calling it sensitive mode, is that it's my daughter actually talked about it. It's an easy car to drive in regular mode. It's an easy car to drive, and just by driving it around, you find yourself slowing down a lot because it does get up to speed quickly. It is sporty. It is that for a regular person. You hit the big sport button on the steering wheel, and well, the smile's happening, right? You do hit the sport button on the steering wheel, and it does the same thing that the Jag did. It's not a great big V8 up front. It's a little four cylinder, right? But it does pounce. It does become ready for action. I can feel more with the road. It becomes like it becomes more sensitive. The car does become more sensitive. And like I have it off right now and I'm driving here on a regular highway and it's just a regular blah 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 car. I turn on the sport mode, which is on right now. And I do this when passing actually. If I'm meeting somebody who's doing 90 or 100 kilometers an hour on the road and I can, I'll throw it into sport mode. I'll throw it back. I usually keep it in manual to keep it at ninth gear for gas mileage, but then I'll throw it into automatic drive mode and stomp the pedal. And this thing grabs and shoots. That's the only way to explain it. Not as bad as the Jag. Like the Jag, when we had it in S mode, and I actually stopped driving it around in S mode that time because it actually did things. And this car does things too when you throw it in the sport mode. The Jag was scary. Jag, that great big BMW V8 that it had. Well, not great big, 4 liters or something. But the thing would pounce, and it was too big a car actually for the island. I could see out on these Alberta highways where that would shine. But I actually didn't need the sport mode in that Jag on those little island roads, the little twisty things. The car was perfect for however it was as it was set up. This car, oh, it's my alarm clock. S mode, and I'm taking that from the Jag because it was just an S button. It didn't have sport. Like this one has sport written on the button, but S mode, I'm actually going to say it's sensitive mode because the car becomes more sensitive, and you as a driver, if you are open to, how the car feels, you become more sensitive with the car. So it's quite literally sensitive mode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate your viewership. Um, I should be doing this at the beginning of the video, but I'm not. Like, subscribe, hit the button for subscriptions and notifications. Let me know about your sensitive mode. See you in the next one.